50 days until the start of the Big South Conference basketball tournament. 62 days until Selection Sunday. A pleasant good evening. Welcome to Buffalo Wild Wings here in Rock Hill off Dave Lyle Boulevard. Glad you're along with us. An hour to talk Winthrop Basketball. The women's team at 8-7, 4-2 in the league. The men's team 7-8 overall and 2-2 in the Big South. And we start the hour with women's coach Kevin Cook. But first, a reminder, you can come out and join us at Buffalo Wild Wings each week on our Coaches Show. We'd love to have you out here. Tuesdays and Thursdays, they have 65-cent wing specials, happy hour specials every weekday from 4 until 8. Come see us out here at BW3's. We're back here next Monday at 6 o'clock on our Coaches Show. Women's team coming off an 81-55 loss over High Point, a team that you beat in last year's Big South Conference tournament. What was the difference in the game?
Well, Dave, first off, it's hard to believe listening to those numbers, 8-7. We're not an 8-7 team. We're better than that. And then to hear the score again, 81-55, those numbers are not indicative of the game that was played on Saturday. With 3:48 to go, the last media timeout in the first half, it was a 2-point game. Excuse me. And then there was a scrum for the ball at the end of the first half, and instead of being down 6, they threw one in at the buzzer, and we go down 8. At the 9-minute mark, it was still an 8-point game, anybody's ball game. And then, you know, when we gave up a 3, it just seems like this season, when we get down a little bit, the wheels fall off. And as I told the team after the game in the locker room, there are going to be peaks and valleys. And when there's a valley, we have got to do a better job of banding together and coming back. We haven't shown that yet this season, and that's something that we've got to. I don't want to get down that far. Trust me on that one. But if we do get down, we've got to find a way to hang in there and battle back.
In that game, Winthrop 3 of 11 from 3. I know Winthrop has not. You haven't really attempted that many threes, but do you want to see more 3-point shooting from your team?
Not necessarily. I want us to have better shot selection. You know, we were up in that game 6-0 and then 10-6, and when it was 10-6, I thought we should have been up either 18 or 20. To 6. We squandered so many opportunities early that if we could have taken advantage of those, the shoe would have been on the other foot, and we would have seen what kind of comeback team that High Point had. But now that's round 1 with High Point. That's water under the bridge. We're facing a very hot Radford team, and after our shoot around at the Coliseum tomorrow, we'll board the bus at 12:30, and we've got to be ready to play.
I thought one of the kind of key points of the game, and usually you don't say something about the first half, but with I think about 10:30 to go, Shaquilla picked up the second foul, and you could almost see the confidence for High Point when Shaquilla came off the floor, and because she was a big difference maker inside. High Point was 0 for 9 to start in that first media timeout.
Absolutely, and as great a player as Erica Williams is, teams gear up on trying to take Shaquilla out of the game. Why? Because she makes such an impact on the defensive end as well as on the offensive end. And, you know, we've got to have her out there on the court more than 25 minutes. We've got to find a way to get to the free throw line more. I mean, we shot it at the free throw line 9 attempts. I think they had 22 or 23. That's a big disparity. So, you know, we've just got to do a better job of knowing when we have the hot hand, and when we don't have the hot hand, let's get others involved.
Stacia Robertson was the Big South Conference Player of the Week, had 22 points against the Eagles. This year, your defense has done a really good job on the first and secondary scores. It's that third, fourth, fifth score sometimes that's had big games. This time, Robertson with none off the floor had an opportunity to make some plays. What does she do well, Stacia Robertson?
She does a great job of getting deep post position, and then when she does, she's got an array of spin moves. She's a whirling dervish. She's got the up and under mastered. which is difficult to guard. She's variety. She can scoop with either right or left hand. And, she's a tough customer to defend, and even tougher when one of the top shot blockers in the country is sitting there next to me.
When it happens, when you lose a game, nobody is happy. But last year, you lost games to top teams in the league towards the end of the regular season and then got your revenge on them in the Big South Conference tournament. I'm not going to ask whether this could be a positive thing, but do you get things out of this game that make you better down the road?
Well, we certainly hope so. And one of those things is the understanding that I just spoke of, that we've got to understand what is a good shot and what is not a good shot. Frankly, what's a bad shot. We force too many things up early, and we're not a great catch-up team right now. We play better from out in front. You say, well, does that put a lot of pressure on you to start games well? Absolutely. I mean, we've got to come out of the gates well. I thought, as Mike pointed out, 0 for 9 for them starting. They looked like a team that was really, really worried and back on their heels, and we didn't take advantage of that. And we've got to be able to do that to teams. Now, this has been a tough run of games here, and it continues with 2 more road games, and then we face none other than Liberty, a week, 8 days from now, so it doesn't get any easier.
At Radford, at Coastal, and then Liberty at home on the 20th, and you can get tickets to see the Flames and the Eagles on the 20th at 803-323-2345, 323-2345, or online at winthropeagles.com. Same way to get tickets to the men's game against Radford on Saturday.
Yes, and both the men's and the women's teams are better than the records indicate right now, and both programs are going to continue to learn, grow, improve, and get better, and that's what a season is about. Now, we're trying to win as many games as we can in the meantime, but in the end, with both the men and the women, this is a one-bid league. And you talk every week about the countdown to Selection Sunday and Selection Monday. And you've just got to be able to put 3 games together when it counts. And that's the bottom line. And up until then, everybody's just trying to improve, grow, and get better.
We talk a lot about X's and O's with you, and I know part of your job is psychologist. How do you feel your team is, what their mindset is right now?
I still think we're together. I still think that we believe, but we've got to continue to build a tougher mindset. You're talking about a mindset, an attitude, a culture. We've just got to be tougher. And that takes a little bit of time sometimes to develop. And I think that will come, but we keep getting hit in the mouth like this. We better get tough and get tough quick.
Well, you have the pieces. I mean, it'd be one thing if we were talking about, well, you're missing this player, you're missing that player, and you don't have this. But you have all the ingredients to be successful. I
agree. We're still trying to find consistency with the point guard position. We're still trying to find consistency overall. That's why you see, win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game. I don't like that trend at all. And, like I told our team today, look, we're right in the hunt. Mm-hmm. If we take care of these 2 road games and then find a way to knock off Liberty at home, we're 1 game back. So that's all it takes. Easier said than done. Win 3 straight, but we win 3 straight, we're 1 game back.
Erica was 8 for 27 on Saturday. I know you like the first part of that. Is the 27 maybe a little bit too much attempts?
Erica is an aggressive player, and I never want to take that aggressive quality away from her. At the same time, she maybe was trying a bit too hard to make the ball go in. A couple of times, she forced the action, But again, that's a player with an aggressive nature.
Sure.
And you'd rather have them aggressive than not aggressive. So, we looked at film today. Her and I had an individual. There's 4 or 5 players where I had individual film sessions with them today, and it was very positive. She's receptive. She wants to be the best she can be, and so that's great. I mean, you're going to see her continue to evolve as a player, and she understood exactly what we were talking about.
But the flip side of that is, and we've seen a tremendous improvement in her mid-range game this year.
Absolutely. And she's concerned with drawing charges, but I told her you cannot lose that aggressiveness as far as attacking the rim. She's on pace to shoot 50 less free throws this year than last year. And again, that's because she's afraid of picking up, charge calls. At the same time, that's what we talked about, that fine line. You got to stay aggressive attacking the rim. That's why we're only getting to the line 9 times.
And, another player who I think has to continue to improve, even though it's her senior year, and that's Samaya Wright. When we see we've seen some great flashes from Samaya, but maybe needs to get back to that consistency with her.
Well, that's the word that's come up in our program a lot, is the word consistency. And the same goes for Samaya. I mean, she's just right along with the team as far as game in, game out, knowing what you're going to get. And that's tough for myself also.
Sure.
As the coach, not knowing what you're going to get game in, game out, not just from Samaya, but from your team. And so I'm as anxious as anybody to see which team shows up tomorrow night.
How much of where you're at, and as you've mentioned, it doesn't really matter what your record is today because it's a one-bid league and it all comes down to a week in March, but how much of kind of it taking a little bit of time to find roles and to get everyone playing on the same kind of page is the fact that you graduated a 4-year starter who was kind of the leader and the veteran presence on the team?
No, she was the leader and she was the veteran presence. And, that's taken longer than I personally thought it would. I mean, I'm just going to say I didn't think we'd still be struggling with that. But we are. It's sorting itself out step by step. And I'm confident that it's going to come rather quickly.
Eagles will return home on the 20th against Liberty. We'll be on the road tomorrow and on the road Saturday at Coastal Carolina. So come out, join the women on the 20th to order tickets. You can call 803-323-2345 or log on to winthropeagles.com. More to come with Eagles head coach Kevin Cook. With Dave Friedman, I am Mike Pacheco. At the bottom of the hour, we'll be joined by men's head coach Pat Kelsey and talk about what's going on with the men's program. So plenty to come here at Buffalo Wild Wings here on the Winthrop Sports Network. Welcome back to the Winthrop Coaches Show. I am Mike Pacheco, Dave Friedman alongside. Glad to be joined by the women's basketball coach, Kevin Cook. You want to get a hold of us here, you can use the hashtag WooCoaches. Follow along at WU Eagles, at Friedman_Dave is Dave's Twitter. I am at Mike Pacheco81, at Pat Kelsey for Coach Kelsey. He'll join us in about 15 minutes or so, and at Winthrop WBB to follow Winthrop's basketball program, the women's basketball program on Twitter. Coming up on the 24th, one of the more popular, more beneficial and community service-oriented promotions with both the men's and women's program, the Back the Pack, that'll be coming up on the 24th. We hope you'll join us for that. You basically bring some canned food goods in, and it's a good opportunity to raise awareness and give an opportunity for those that are a little bit less fortunate. It's a good opportunity to maybe teach a life lesson to the students.
Absolutely. Daniel Hopper and Jennifer Graham, one of our great supporters, get behind that event and do a great job with it. And we always have an outstanding crowd for the men's and women's games, and are looking forward to that support because we want to continue to build that rapport. And we are, Winthrop is Rock Hill's team. And we want to have that great relationship with the community in every way. So I hope everyone comes out to the game.
All right, so coming up next tomorrow night for the women's team, Radford team that's 7-6, 4-2, so tied with Winthrop, same record in conference as the Eagles. You're big on quotations, nicknames, and such like that. This team is coming in as hot as a firecracker, as you say.
Hot as a firecracker on the 4th of July, for sure. They've got great guards, and as most people who follow basketball know, to be successful, you've got to have great guard play. And that's where it begins with Radford, with Ayanna Avery and Foy. They both had outstanding seasons, and they're going to be a focal point of our defense. We've got to shut them down. Now, they also have some active post players and a stable full of them. They're quick on their feet, and the thing that they do best is crash the offensive boards. And this has been an area of concern for us, is rebounding all season long. So we're going to be put to the test once again against a team that likes to tomahawk the offensive glass.
Winthrop won both meetings last year, but I remember last year at Radford just thinking about, even though Winthrop kind of had the game in control in the second half, Radford played with a lot of energy. What's the message to your team, knowing that this is a team, second year under Mike McGuire, they're a team that's trying to turn things around, and they're going to come in on their home court wanting to knock off the defending champs?
Absolutely. And again, we've talked about this before. We're still learning to kind of how to play with being the hunted. And that's what you saw in the High Point game. They acted like we stole their ring, and they played like it. And that's what it's about. Everybody wants that championship ring. And so we've got to be ready on Saturday. We've got to be ready Saturday also against Coastal, but we've definitely got to be ready against Radford on tomorrow night to take their best shot.
When you face a team like Radford, it's a second season for Mike McGuire. Now, they do have some of the same pieces from last year. Kira MacGyver, you mentioned Foy and Avery. But with all these new pieces, you obviously have to pay attention to what's going on with this year. When you look at scouting, I mean, sometimes like with Kerry Green, if you want to go back 2-3 years, you can do that. What's the challenge in facing a team that's kind of young and starting to build?
Well, one thing, Coach McGuire is a system coach, so there's not a lot of change in what he's doing. He's got a couple of new baseline plays, but he's basically running his same offense from the half-court set. Avery and Foy are on the push just a tad bit more, but they're not going to hurt us, in transition. If we get hurt tomorrow night, it's going to be on multiple attempts. And so we've got to force a bad shot and then only allow one shot, and then we've got to do a good job. I think what you're going to see tomorrow night is a game in the 50s, 60s. We're going to really try to grind it out with them. We got to do a better job of taking care of the basketball and maximizing each possession.
And obviously in college sports, you don't have trade deadlines. You don't have those deals. You can't sign a free agent. But sometimes when you have a player that doesn't play the first semester, or rarely plays the first semester, and comes back in the second semester, it's kind of like getting added personnel. We did see one game from Taylor against Tennessee in the Taylor Calvert in the first semester, but now you've had to see three games now. How do you feel she's working her way back into the rotation?
Slowly, but again, we're peaking for that first week in March, and she'll start the ball game tomorrow. And as I told Symphony Buford today, I kind of pulled her aside and I said, be ready for tomorrow. She's been working really hard, and I think she's ready for to come in and contribute. She adds a toughness and a fearlessness, and good things happen when she's in the game, so she might just be playing a little bit more tomorrow than usual.
We talked about the coach as psychologist. I think one thing, an advantage, I think, if the player sees on it this year, that last year there were more defined roles. This year you certainly have a pecking order, but there's still some good opportunity to practice hard, make some plays in practice, and earn some playing time on the floor.
Absolutely. Every day is like a performance where you're trying out for perhaps a role in a play. And so that's actually what they're doing. They're working to earn minutes. And so yes, there are opportunities, and I try to reward those opportunities with chunks of time in a game. And then, of course, they earn my trust with the way that they play in games. And the better they play, of course, the more they're going to play.
You talked about Radford running a system. Most every team runs a system of some sort or another, including your team, both offensively and defensively. You have primary things that you like to do, a basic concept or a goal. You're going about it. As the year moves along, how much do you tweak what you're doing?
For this year, I've done a tremendous amount of tweaking. I just haven't been content or satisfied with things, and that's not normal for me or for programs. But we have been a tough scout. I will say that with the many additions that we've made, and our team's been very flexible. But again, that's because of losing a player like DeQuisha and another guard, her running mate Tiffany Charles. With those two, you knew what you were going to get game in, game out. Now, this season, I'm still searching for that.
So tell us about a tweak that you made at some point this year. How would it be something, or would it be something that a fan that comes to the game recognize?
Yes, if they look closely, we've pretty much overhauled our entire offense from a half-court set. And we've totally done away with, in our offense, we use the first 4 games. And, I'm very transparent, on these shows, and I'm not trying to hide anything. Every practice is open. So if you want to come out and watch a practice, we tee it up at 11 every day and go at it. So come on out to the Coliseum.
Well, to dovetail on Dave's question, we're now kind of in the middle portion of the schedule. You're working some freshmen in. You kind of want to guard against kind of that freshman wall, if you will. And now some of the freshmen you might even start to consider being sophomores because of how long they've been together since, going back to the summer. You got more games now than you did in the early non-conference part of the schedule. How much do you kind of balance trying to put some tweaks in, trying to keep things interesting, but also stay true to what your core beliefs are?
Well, I think the tweaking now is just about finished because, as we talked about on a previous show, you use that break time to get better. And we put a lot of things and added many things during that time. Now you've got to concern yourself with fresh legs. They've been grinding now for a while, so our practices are cut anywhere from 90 minutes will be the longest that we go, and the norm is 60 to 75 minutes for practice, because it's just as important to stay fresh mentally as it is physically at this point in the season.
How important a factor was that last year?
Huge, especially the amount of minutes I play.
The
four players.
Yeah.
You've got to concern yourself with that. And, Erica Williams is leading the conference in minutes again this year, 35, 36 a game. So I'm very mindful of that, and that's why we keep it right between an hour and 75 minutes.
Well, I will check in with you almost this time tomorrow. We'll be at the Dedman Center in the New River Valley in Radford, Virginia. Hope you'll join us here on 104.1 The Bridge. We'll be talking with Coach Kelsey coming up here in a moment. But, Coach Cook, appreciate the time. As always, a fun conversation. And you and I will speak again tomorrow.
Hey, looking forward to it, and hope everybody gives a listen.
All right.
Hold on. Who do you like in the football game?
Oh, I forgot to ask that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Buckeyes.
Yeah, come on. He's from Ohio. I mean, it's an Ohio boy. That's, Well, I'm sure we might get a similar answer from our next guest. Pat Kelsey joining us, the men's basketball coach. Winthrop Coaches Show continues here from Buffalo Wild Wings here on the Winthrop Sports Network.
Our Winthrop Basketball Coaches Show live from BW3's. Glad you're with us. We're here each week from Buffalo Wild Wings off of Dave Lyle Boulevard in Rock Hill. Don't forget to stop by on Tuesdays, Wing Tuesdays, Boneless Thursdays, 65-cent wings. Happy hour 4 until 8 each weekday. $3 domestics. Come see our friends here at Buffalo Wild Wings. The men's basketball team is 7-8. 2-2 in the Big South Conference, and all 4 games have been decided by a single possession. An overtime win against Longwood, a double OT loss at High Point, a 1-point win at Presbyterian, and a 1-point loss at Gardner-Webb over the weekend. We welcome in men's coach Pat Kelsey. You guys certainly make it interesting. Is that just the league this year? Teams are that closely bunched?
I think so. Most of the time when you get to conference play, that's what the game comes down to, the last 4-minute war, the last couple possessions, and it's proved to be that way this early part of the season. I'm sure it'll continue on the move forward.
It's so easy when you win a dramatic game to get very high and you lose a tight game to get very low. How do you keep yourself and your team kind of on an even plane?
I don't know. I mean, that's just my disposition. I'm an emotional guy, and I wear my emotions on my sleeve. But being in this business for a long time, and then being under Coach Prosser's tutelage for a long time, he had a really, really good way about him in terms of turning the page and focusing on the task at hand. And can't do anything about what happened yesterday, and you can't do anything yet about what will happen tomorrow. You can handle and do something about today, and that's a great practice and a great day of preparation, which I feel like we had.
65-64 was the final. Gardner-Webb beat you guys after you had a sizable lead, a 16-point lead at halftime. You've gone back, you've watched the film, you've been in practice, you've huddled with your coaches. What did you learn? What happened in the game?
Well, I think what I told you afterwards in the postgame, a lot of the things that we did in the first half to build the lead, we didn't sustain in the second half. We knew that they were going to come out and throw haymakers. That's a very good team. It's a very tough team. It's a very well-coached team, and it's a prideful team. And, for lack of a better term, we were kicking their tail at half. And I'm sure Tim, peeled some paint off the wall at halftime, and I told my guys that's what would happen. And, sure enough, they came out, and their intensity was up a notch. They were into us more. They were making our catches tougher. They were, attacking with ferocity, which we knew they would. And, I told our guys we're going to have to stand there toe-to-toe and take that punch and, focus on splitting the game up into 4-minute segments and not worry about what's on the scoreboard. And, the shame of it is we told our guys we win 3 of 5 wars in the second half. We'll win going away. And we went 0-5. And, I think 2 things I told our team in the huddle before practice was, toughness and discipline. And, the discipline comes into play, I think, from the offensive end. If you look at how we scored in the first half, the ball was popping. The ball was getting from the first to the second to the third side of the floor. We were attacking in transition. We were sharing the basketball. We weren't pressing. And I think in the second half, when things got tight and when they made their run, I've said this before, but I think we tried to shoot our way out of trouble instead of executing our way out of trouble. And that's exactly what we didn't want to do. So I told our team on the move forward, obviously we have to have the discipline to continue to execute at a high level, despite the atmosphere, despite the run that another team's making or what have you. And then, the toughness aspect, I think, came into play late in the game. And when I watched the tape and broke down the last 8 or 9 minutes, from the 8:13 mark on, they threw the ball into the post 9 times. And we worked diligently the days leading up to the game on not letting us beat them, not letting them beat us at the box. The year before, they went right at our teeth. And Jerome Hill and Terrell Nelson really beat us inside, and we weren't going to let that happen. And as you guys know, in game planning, you can't take everything away. You got to pick and choose what you're really, really going to focus on. And we sure as heck weren't going to let those guys beat us at the basket. And we didn't do that. We devised some ways to get the ball out of the post and force them to beat us from the perimeter. And, for pretty much the entire game, it worked. The problem was the last 8 minutes, they threw the ball into the post 9 times. We got the ball out of the post 8 times. And out of those times, we got them to miss 7, which is a really, really good percentage. The problem is they got all 7 of those misses back. And if you're going to win games down the stretch on the road and, so to speak, put your foot on a team's neck, you got to get those game-ending, game-clinching, rat-out, tough, get your nose dirty rebounds that sometimes bounce, carry them far off the rim. Sometimes they're just up in the air 50-50 style for anybody to be had. And there were several opportunities where he didn't get that done. And, if you're going to win games on the road against tough, good coach teams, well-coached teams, you're going to have to make those hustle plays down the stretch.
Baseball, sometimes you just, if things aren't going so well, sometimes you just need that little single to kind of get you going. How important, because this seems real close. I mean, Dave mentioned at the top, you guys are there, but you just need to get over that hump, and then hopefully, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, 3 becomes 4.
Yeah, and that's for you guys to discuss. Like, literally, I mean, I focus on having the best 120-minute practice in America today. Now, there might have been 600 teams that had better practices today. That's up in the air and up for debate, but that was our focus. And we as a coaching staff wanted to prepare that way, and we wanted to make sure that, you guys were there. It wasn't for the faint of heart. It was some hand-to-hand combat, but I think a statement needed to be made in terms of the type of toughness we need to play with down the stretch to win those type of games. But, it'll come. I really feel looking at our team and watching us progress and grow, some of these gut-wrenching losses, some of these losses down the stretch that, obviously don't show up in the win column. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. I really feel like our team is making strides and is growing. And as long as, we continue to do that, we'll be a force to be reckoned with throughout the rest of the season, and especially into the all-important March weeks.
When you talk about getting that tough rebound, that second chance shot that maybe Gardner-Webb doesn't get another opportunity, and that's the difference in what is a 1-point game. How much is not having Tevin Prescott, who I think is second in the team in rebounding, a veteran guy, a part of that?
We make no excuses and we give no explanations. Tevin Prescott's out and he's hurt, and we can't do anything about that. But there is not one person in that locker room, and there's not anybody standing here with this headset on that's going to say that's the reason we're not getting toughness, game-clinching rebounds down the stretch. I mean, if you want to say Tevin Prescott, you can say James Bourne, Larry Brown, Zach Price, Tevin Prescott. At the end of the day, the guys that got Winthrop jerseys on have to play like Winthrop basketball players down the stretch, and that's make the 50-50 plays and make the toughness plays down the stretch to end games. But, there is no excuse for guys being out. Our mentality always is next man up, and, that's just how it is.
Do you expect Tevin to be back this week, next week? Is there any time frame?
You've asked me that a million times, and I wish I could tell you yes. I felt like we were really, really making progress, and he's been having several setbacks where they kind of increase his activity load, and he'll experience pain. Then we got to scale him back a little bit, and then sit him out for a couple of days, then try it again. I can only coach the guys that have their sneakers laced up really tight, and Jeff Lahr will tell me when he's ready to go. Jeff's the best in the country at what he does, and he does an unbelievable job with our guys, rehabbing them, and Tevin's a really tough kid. So I know when he is able to be out there, he'll be out there, and when he's out there, I'll coach him like my hair's on fire.
Well, on the flip side of that, with injury comes opportunity, and now it's kind of a carrot for some of the younger guys to step up and show what they can do and be part of the next step.
Yeah, and you've seen that. There's been, Doobie has taken steps forward, and then as a freshman, he'll take a step back. And then Joey Lopez will take a couple steps forward, and he'll take a step back. Xavier Cooks will do that. And I think that inconsistency a little bit is part of being a freshman, but they've all shown the type of flashes that, that get you really, really excited. And that shows you the type of potential they have. And I think all three of those guys are going to be really, really good players. And you're exactly right. The opportunity that they have at hand is going to do nothing but help them and help us on the move forward. Sometimes you have to stub your toe in the meantime, which isn't very fun. But I think getting those guys this experience is going to be really good.
You mentioned it was a tough practice today, and I think Mike and I can attest to that. It was a competitive practice, and there was a lot of energy at practice, and you demand a lot of the players, but you don't do it every single day. You want to run practice, and you want to accomplish whatever your goals are for that particular day, and some days you have to put a little more mustard on it than other days, but how do you determine when you go to the well and how often you go to the well?
Well, I think it's important as a coach to know your team. And I think it's failed thinking, or it's flawed thinking, if you will, is if a coach does the exact same thing no matter who they're coaching. Right. And, I've been part of teams that my mentor coached, or that I played under Coach Prosser at Xavier at Wake Forest. And, we had the type of guys where, you could, practice a certain way. I mean, I told our guys today, we did this drill called war rebounding. We don't do it all the time. I mean, here we do it every couple weeks, and because it's not for the faint of heart now. I mean, you got to man up, if you will, and you got to block out, and there's a lot of fouls that are taking place, and very, very few of them are called, if you know what I mean. And our guys are kind of like, geez, well, Pete's coach, this is pretty physical. And I stopped practice and I pointed at Mark Prosser and I said, I played for his dad and I coached under his dad. And I'm just telling you guys right now, we did war rebounding at game day shoot around, and that is no lie. Like it was just how it was done. And with the amount of injuries that we have and the amount of guys that we have sitting out, and you can say that we have depth because we'll play 9 or 10 guys, but we're not all that deep at various positions. And you got to be really, really careful about what's too much and what's not enough. So that's the rub and the rhythm that you got to have and feel as a coach is when is it time to put your foot on the accelerator and when's the time to scale back. Obviously, we're getting to mid-January, so it's prep game. So if our guys aren't battle tested and ready by now, it's almost too late.
I don't know if fun's the right way to put it, but I mean, there's no science on that part of the coaching. It's really feel. Is that kind of make it fun?
It is, and you'll go off script sometime, and I'm not an off script guy. I mean, my practice plans are planned out to the minute, but sometimes you're mistaking activity for achievement. If you think like, hey, well, let's just go to the next thing and cross off the next thing on the list, but then you slow down, you step back, and go, hold on, we didn't get better at what we just did. Put the time back on the clock and start over. And at times like that, you go off script. I mean, there were a lot of things we did today that weren't on the practice plan, but I just felt in my gut as a coach that we needed to spend more time or we needed to do that, and that's just how it goes sometimes. You're right.
We talked to women's coach Kevin Cook before you, and we asked him a question about when do you make tweaks with your system, and he said he's made tweaks throughout this year. He's kind of junked a couple things and changed. You talked about every group of kids having to be coached differently because different personalities take on different sort of coaching. What about with your system? Do you make tweaks along the line? How do you determine when it's a player, it's an individual, and how do you determine when it's something with what you're doing?
Well, we've treated this team different than we have in the last several years, mostly because we're playing a lot of freshmen, especially at the post. And as you know, they're very, very talented. But if you look at the guys that aren't in right now, Tevin for the last 3 games, James Bourne, Larry Brown, even Zach, who doesn't know our system but has been in college basketball for a long time, those guys that you were able to move faster. You were able to go to the next chapter of the book and add to your package. And we really had to scale back, especially our offensive package, because you have to sort of put things in and coach to the lowest common denominator in terms of, what they're getting and what they're absorbing. So, our offensive package isn't near as extensive as it's been in the past in terms of our set plays and our reads and our wrinkles. And then on the defensive end, as you know, we're very systematic, but we're doing a lot of different things with post defense to try to hide, if you will, or disguise, or to assist or give a crutch to our lack of depth in the post. And you saw that the other night at Gardner Webb, and it was very effective. At the end of the day, we just didn't rebound.
We're live from Buffalo Wild Wings. It's our Winthrop Basketball Coaches Show. You can send us questions for Coach Kelsey on Twitter using #WooCoaches. That's #WUCoaches. More to come after this on the Winthrop Sports Network. We're back on our Winthrop Coaches Show live from Buffalo Wild Wings alongside Mike Pacheco. I'm Dave Friedman, men's basketball coach Pat Kelsey joining us. The men play at Asheville Wednesday, 7 o'clock tip-off. We'll have coverage beginning at 6:30. Then Saturday, Winthrop home to take on Radford. That game will air on WRHI, 1340 AM and 94.3 FM. That's Saturday, Winthrop and Radford at 1. We hope you can make it out to the Coliseum. But if you cannot, that game will be on 94.3 FM and 1340 AM because the women's team will be playing at the same time at Coastal, and that game will air on the Bridge. Rejoined by men's coach Pat Kelsey now. UNC Asheville is 7-7, but they're 3-0 in the Big South, and you played wars against them last year. Kind of an amazing comeback at the Coliseum, and then that great game in the conference tournament. They're a team that really has an ability to score.
Yeah, they do. Nick's doing a really good job with that team. They're very efficient. Told our guys before the game, the ball really pops. They move the ball. They share the ball. They get the ball from one side of the floor to the other. They play inside out. Their post players touch the ball. They're not an overly complicated team, but they they play a very free European almost style of basketball. And their post players will score. They're a good offensive rebounding team. And then obviously Andrew Rousey is one of the most, if not the most, dangerous, prolific scorer in our league. So you have to have tabs on him and know where he's at all times.
Rousey's averaging 19 a game, but 7.7 in 3 conference games. He's 2 of his last 20 on three-pointers.
Don't pay attention to that.
Yeah, obviously. He's a great scorer. He's a first-team all-conference player. But when you've watched the tape, are teams doing something different to him? Are they making things more difficult?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things is that they've kind of gotten to the point where they're not completely reliant on him. Some of the games, I think the Radford game that I watched today, he was in foul trouble and he was out for a pretty large portion of the game. But I think by design they don't want to be that one-dimensional. Obviously everybody knows how dangerous he is and how explosive of a scorer he is. But I think the fact that they're developing scoring from, the freshman Vanetta, from Robertson, they'll go inside to the 9'4" kid. They're developing, 1 through 5 scoring threats. So I would say that's probably the biggest reason is they're not that one-dimensional.
The 9'4" kid is 7-footer Jaleel Roberts, who is in foul trouble frequently. But when he is not, he is blocking shots at an incredible rate. How does your offense change when you have a guy underneath the basket there that's knocking away everything in sight?
Well, you got to try to draw him away from the basket first and foremost. If he's allowed to just set up by the basket like an aircraft carrier, he's going to really bother you. The way we play in our ball screen motion, he's going to be tangled up with duck-ins and things like that it's going to be hopefully hard for him to get his feet under him to block a lot of shots at the rim. But, when they're in man-to-man and he's got to come out in guard ball screens and things like that, that's when it's advantage you. When he can set up shop close to the basket, I mean, it's really hard. He's like a raptor when he puts his hands in the air.
When you look at your team, there's no doubt that Keon Moore is having a sensational year. He's a first-team all-conference player. He was great in the tournament last year. It seems to me, and you're watching a lot more tape than I am, but I've seen every game here for 9 years or something, that the way teams are defending him, early on, he's catching off the screens and able to shoot. And after he makes 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, at some point, they're double teaming on the perimeter or more likely just crowding him and forcing him to dribble. What are your options, or what are Keon's options to get going when teams are that far up in his shorts defensively?
Well, I mean, they're that way from the beginning of the game. I mean, everybody knows the scouting report, and they know, what an important piece he is to us offensively, defensively as well. I think early on he was in the game the other day against Gardner-Webb, he was letting the offense come to him. He wasn't forcing things, and we were sharing the ball. The ball was popping. And he was getting wide open looks in transition, and we were getting him in closeout situations where they have to help. And then I felt like in the second half, and I told him this, that, he was trying to force the issue a little bit too much. You're right. When he comes off a screen, 2 guys run at him. when we run a set play for him, they try to jump it. And, he has to utilize the weapons around him. For instance, when he runs off a screen, if he catches and two guys run at him, he's got to find the second cutter who's the screener, whether it's a slip to the basket or it's a pop, to a Jared Scott or a Xavier Cooks for a drive. If it's Andre Smith at the top of the key and they throw the ball to Keon Moore on a curl cut, and Andre Smith's guy, what we call plugs or jumps and swipes and almost goes 2 on the ball for a second, he's got to throw that little hot potato pass back to Andre. And if you watch the tape, there were 6 or 7, maybe 8 instances where he could have made the next play, taken advantage of the fact that he was double teamed on actions and do what the game tells you and either throw the ball back or throw the ball forward. And I think, he doesn't have a selfish bone in his body, but I think in big time spots, he wants to be the guy. And I want him to be the guy. Sure. But you have to take what the defense gives you, and you have to do what the game tells you. And he knows that. Talked about that. We addressed it today in practice, and he'll be better in that regard on the move forward.
Andre Smith and Keon Johnson's numbers are simply not as good as they were last year. Andre's passed the ball really well. I think you could argue he's having a good year, but from a shooting perspective, the numbers aren't as good. You talked about Keon Johnson kind of beginning to figure it out and sort of coming on, but how does it change your attack and change your ability to win games when those two guys aren't shooting at that very high clip?
We need them to. You've talked about the Keon Moore's had, and he didn't have his best game the other day, but we got to get Andre. We have to get Andre, and we have to get Keon Johnson going. You mentioned Andre Smith's floor game. I think to simply look at his numbers and say he's having a bad year because he's not shooting as well is flawed thinking, because his assist to turnover ratio a whole lot better. But we need him to shoot the ball better, and he knows that. And he works diligently. He works as hard as anybody I've ever coached on his jump shot. I really feel like Keon Johnson's starting to come around. As you guys know, he essentially didn't have an off season. He spent 95% of the off season feature that he had. And I told you guys before we went on the air, I really feel like he's starting to come on. He looks healthy for the first time. He's since he's feeling better, I feel like he's playing more engaged. And I think we can expect big things from him, he and Andre down the stretch.
Andre Smith takes a lot of deep threes.
Fours. I call him fours sometimes.
Do you like those shots? I mean, he can hit those. He's a capable shooter out there. Is that a good shot?
Well, obviously, the closer to the basket, the higher the shooting percentage. I was kidding with you. Sometimes we call them fours or fives when I call it. And before, but, people know his scouting report. And, when we drive the basketball, people are going to dare us to finish at the rim. When we throw the ball inside to the post, people are going to dare our bigs to finish. Like, when we drive, they're not helping off Andre Smith. When we throw it in the Andre Smith and Keon Johnson. And, because of that, sometimes to get his look, he feels like he has to scoot. And he does sometimes. He has to scoot out a little bit farther. Andre's not the tallest guy in the world. He's 5'9". So sometimes it's harder for him to get a look off. If he's closer to the line, people close out to him. He's got to shoot over longer guys. So, no, I'd rather him shoot closer to the rim, but necessity. Sometimes it's just out of sort of flawed positioning by him.
We talked a lot about trying to get better every practice, every game. When you look back to the beginning of the year, who do you feel like has maybe made the biggest leap from day one to where we are right now?
That's a hard question. I mean, I think everybody hoped and expected Keon Moore would have the type of year he's having, and we need him to continue to be that way. I've really seen great growth, and you guys see it, and then you see him stub their toe, as I said earlier as well. I've really seen Xavier Cooks, Dubio KK, and Joseph Lopez really come on. And then they'll hit a freshman wall and be terrible for a couple days in practice and look like lost puppies. But I really feel like those guys are but we don't win the PC game without Derek, so it's good to see him really start to come on.
And this happens every sport at some point for the freshman. What do you do? And maybe this is a feel thing again, but what do you do when you see a freshman that's maybe hitting that freshman wall?
Well, you tell them ahead of time that it's coming and to avoid it, and you try to prepare them for what college basketball is going to be like. And you tell them this isn't high school. It's way more intense, mentally, physically, emotionally, everything. And you try to get them to get in a routine of staying consistent. continues throughout the rest of the year. And then, if you see it coming on, you need to get them some extra rest minutes and scale back their practice a little bit and have them over to your house, have a little pep rally, high five them, hug them, kiss them on the cheek, get them some of mom's cooking, something like that. Sometimes those are the type of things you need to do for freshmen.
You got Urban Meyer's Buckeyes tonight or Marcus Mariota and the Ducks?
I'm an Ohio guy, born and raised Buckeye, as you know, so I'm going to root for Ohio State. But as I've told you guys before, Cincinnati's simply not a big Ohio State town. It's just not. I don't know why. Everywhere else in the state of Ohio, people bleed, the red and the silver. I'm a Muskie. We're undefeated in football since 1974.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And, UC and Xavier and Kentucky, I think, are bigger in Cincinnati. But I'll be rooting for –
Will you be watching?
Absolutely. While the game's on. Any sports fan with blood in their body's watching this one tonight. It's as big as it gets, literally.
During the season, obviously, you're focused on the task at hand every practice, every day. But do you have to take 10 minutes, an hour here and there to just kind of recharge?
Well, I mean, you know how it is, Mike. There's nothing like that one-on-one time with your children.
Yeah.
And my release and my getaway is not golf. I would golf if I was good. I'm freaking terrible. My release is to, play board games, play video games, play dolls, play dress-ups with my kids, and that helps me get my mind off things, and I love it.
For men, Cook and Mike Pacheco, I'm Dave Friedman. Our Winthrop Coaches Show is brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings. We're back here at BW3's next Monday at 6. Women's basketball action tomorrow. Ladies are at Radford at 7. Men's basketball action Wednesday at UNC Asheville. And both teams, or the men come home on Saturday. The women are home January 20th. For Austin Peak back in studio, I'm Dave Friedman. We'll talk to you next time on the Winthrop Sports Network.